Alright, hello guys, welcome to part 10 of the Transformer tutorial series. This is the last part. In this part I will wrap some stuff up and fix some things, like fix some of the reflections over here in this part. I will add a mask for this, so it will be rotoscoping. I don't know what this text is doing. Okay. And I'll do some color correction and add camera shake when the robot lands, which makes a huge difference. Okay, so let's take a look at this node tree we have. Oh yeah, one thing I want to do is this motion blur doesn't look too good now, so what you want to do is press or check curved in this vector blur node, and it will make a huge difference. Look at that, it looks a lot better. So yeah, make sure curved is checked. It takes a little bit longer to composite, but it will look a lot better. So do the same thing for the debris. And for now I'm gonna just mute these two nodes to speed up the workflow. Okay, let's start with adding this mask for this part. Let me find the frame where we have this problem. Alright, so we have a few shards over here, and I just want to mask them out where they are behind this part, as well as here. I'll just create a mask occluding this whole thing. I'm not gonna bother about these little holes in here. So yeah. To add a mask, you should go to the movie clip editor. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, then open your video. I'm going to open the parking garage. Open it as a movie clip. There we have it. Let me go to this part and just go shift left arrow to the first frame. Right now we are in tracking mode, but you can change this to mask mode, and that will change a lot of these buttons and settings. But the thing you want to do is add a new mask. Alright, and then you can control click to add points. So let me zoom in and create points here. And I don't want to add a lot of points, so I'm going to add as few as possible. So create a quick mask like this. I'm going to tweak it in a minute when I'm round, when I have the full circle. I'll tweak it. Okay, and then go into mask and toggle cyclic, and it will create the last piece. Okay, so now all these things are a bit rounded, the corners are round. So the thing I wanted to do is select them with right click and select, I'll just select one of them and then press V and V again to make it a vector type. And actually I want to do this for every point, so let's select all of these points and press V twice to make them simple. And I can see I messed up something here. With control click you can add a new point and then drag it to the location you want. It's a shame the screencast keys don't work here. So I'm gonna try to remember to tell you every button I'm pressing. Alright, just change this a little bit. And we don't need that much space. Okay, I think this looks reasonable. So now we only have a good mask on layer 144, frame 144, because when we play this back, it's yeah, just staying at the same place, of course. Let me check the mask settings. Set the start frame to 144 and the end frame to 500. Alright, yeah, so we can add a keyframe on this first frame and rotoscope this by hand, but what I want to do is make our lives a little bit easier with a tracker. So go back to tracking mode and then add a tracker with control click, for example at this corner point, and track it backwards. And go back to the frame we started on, 250, and track forwards. Okay, now this creates a 2D tracker and it will exactly follow this corner. And now we can go back to mask and we can still see this tracker. Go back to the first frame where the mask is valid and then select this whole thing. Make sure all the points are selected. And go to mask, make parent, or click this button, same thing, make parent. That will make this active tracker the parent of all the selected points in your mask. So what happens now, when we scrub through the time, we can see those points are following this tracker, which is very useful. So now this point is exactly at the right spot and the rest should be scaled or rotated. So let's go to the last frame and try to match this. Oh wait, before I want to do that, I want to set a keyframe. So with all those points selected, press I and that will insert a shape key. If you don't do this and you change anything, it will be changed. You will mess up your first frame. So now go to the last frame with shift right arrow and I'm gonna scale up this mask, and it doesn't really work because it scales into the center. So I'm gonna Control Z to undo this, and I'm gonna select only this corner point. And if I now press S, it will scale. Wait. Somehow it doesn't work. Last time I tried this, it did work. I was able to scale along this point, but it's... I don't know what I did wrong. No, it doesn't work. Okay, well, then we have to select all the points with A. Right now none of them are selected, and now all of them. So I'm going to scale this up a little bit and move it over. Try to match every point. Try to match all of this stuff. Now again, select every point and press I to insert another keyframe. And now it seems to interpolate perfectly. We can look in the middle for wrong frames. Oops. Oops. Trying to grab this green thing. Yeah, it looks pretty good. We can go to roughly the middle frame and then create one more keyframe, but I think it looks great. It's a very easy rotoscope, this, and one tracker does the trick. So yeah, select them all and insert another keyframe. And now we have this nice roto of this thing that occludes, that it should occlude the debris. So I'm gonna call this roto, and yeah, I think all these settings are fine. This is the parent track. Okay, so now I can go back to my nodes. Make this a little bit bigger, and I'm gonna import this mask in here with an input mask node. There we go. And here we can choose the mask. Choose roto. Just made it. And yeah, let's take a look at it. What we get. Alright, so this is the mask. Let's zoom in. You can see the edges are really sharp. Although feather is enabled, doesn't seem to do a lot. And what I encountered is that anti-alias doesn't do anything. It's, I don't know why, but doesn't make any difference. So this is probably a bug, because we should be able to get smooth edges here, and this also ruins our shot, because, well, it doesn't ruin it, but it looks fake, because whenever we try to mask out the debris, it looks like you can see this edge really clearly. So that's yes, probably a bug, and if not, I'm probably messing something up in the settings. If you know what I'm doing wrong, please put it in the comments. So yeah, here we have the mask, and the way to use this is I'm gonna just plug it into the factor of the debris. This is all the debris stuff, and it is being composited over the shot with this node. So if I plug in the mask in here and look at the result, I can see we have no debris, only where the mask is. So we get the opposite effect of what we want. So to fix this, I'm gonna invert the mask, and you can use an invert node, but you can also go into the mask settings and just invert it with this button. So let me press this, and now let me find a frame. As you can see, now it works. The debris is being masked out for all this stuff. Something else we need to mask out is the reflection and the shadow at this point, because it doesn't make sense to have a reflection at this thing here. So the thing I want to do is plug in the mask in here as well, so that masks out the reflection, and also in the shadow. And you can see we have this nasty black spot, and this is the result of the very strong shadow which makes the ground almost zero, and then applying the reflection, which subtracts even more of this value, which is already almost black. So it's going to be a negative value, as you can see. So the way to solve this is to just swap the reflection and the shadow. So this should come after applying the reflection. Normally I always do the shadow first, but in this case it works better when you do it when you switch it. So I'm gonna plug in the original shot in here. I'm gonna plug in this result in here and this result in here, and this looks a lot better. And we can even come in, and because I applied this mask, we cannot change the factor of the reflection or the shadow. And I should swap these two as well. Okay, we cannot use the factor anymore. So I'm gonna add a math node, plug it in here, and change this to multiply. And now you can use this number here, this value, to add more or less of the reflection. And do the same thing for the shadow, of course. Okay, that looks a lot better. Now, let's collapse all these nodes to keep things nice and clean. So now we have a mask, and we mask out the reflections and the shadows and the debris itself. Something else I want to fix is this really weird reflection. And because the way we apply these reflections, it works for this part, but since we didn't remodel this whole fence, it thinks this ground is just plain, has a plain sky reflection, but since this is darker, the reflection makes it even more dark, and it looks like this. So the way to fix this is add a sort of a mask for the reflections, and to create this sort of mask or matte, I'm gonna take the original shot and apply or add an RGB curves node, plug it in here, and let's take a look at the result. And I'm going to add a lot more contrast by doing this and this. Actually, that doesn't look too good. So I'm going to try to make the ground really bright, and now I'm going to use this as a matte for the reflections. So I'm going to plug this into another multiply node. Let me take it back here. So this is now the reflection pipe. So here I'm going to duplicate this multiply node and plug in the result of this high contrast shot. And what we should see now is less reflections at those parts and just more reflection over here, and it's a little light, so I'm gonna add a little bit more with increasing this value. Yeah, so now this problem is fixed. You can see that it doesn't look as weird anymore. And when we want to be fully realistic, we should actually not see this fence at all in the reflection, but that's okay. Yeah, if you want to really make this perfect, you should be remodeling this whole fence, and it should exactly match the shot, and then the reflection of the fence will be subtracted out of the shot and replaced with the reflection of this thing. But that's, yeah, too much for this tutorial, so I'm not going to do that. It looks a lot better now, so I'm happy with it. Let's move on. Alright, what's next? I am gonna add some color correction to the whole shot. Let's do that with an RGB curves node after a use saturation value node. I'm gonna collapse these guys. Okay, so the first use saturation value, and I'm gonna just decrease the saturation by 10%, so 0.9. So this removes a bit of the color, and let's add a bit of color with the RGB curves node. So let's go into the blue channel and add some contrast here. You can make the sky a little bit more blue and the rest not, because the sky is a really bright value, and we're increasing the bright values with this high point. And I'm gonna increase the value of the shot as well. All right. And maybe add a little bit of green, or only to the shadows. If you want to add green to the shadows, you can increase this lower point a little bit. As you can see, this is way too much. Let's add another 0 here. That's better. Maybe 0.003. Yeah. Okay. Red. And I'm just playing with these things to get different looks and feels of the shot, and you can just mess around with this. And yeah, I may want to add more or remove some of the red values in the lower pixel values, like this. And then in the overall color, I go add some contrast by making this kind of an S shape. Okay, let's look at the difference by selecting those two nodes and press M to mute them. So this is before and this is after. So yeah, I just changed the look of the shot a little bit, added more blue, added more greenish blue, and yeah, I like this. Next thing I want to do is add camera shake, because when the robot lands, it's a massive impact. So when you add camera shake to the shot, it will really make a difference and it will really look better. So to add camera shake to a 2D shot, I'm gonna just add a distort node and add translation and plug it in at the end of the pipeline. And let's find the frame where the robot hits the ground for the first time. Okay, this is it. And now I'm gonna add 2 keyframes for the X and Y value of this node. Okay, then go 1 frame after the first impact, and then move this shot down, because the robot is falling or landing, it's moving down. I'm gonna move the shot down, so in the Y direction -2 pixels. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it will really be noticeable. And then the X direction maybe -0.5 to make it a little less straight. And now add 2 more keyframes with I. Oh, let me do that again. Yep. And now I'm going to change this mask window to a graph editor. And let's see, we have the default the X and Y values, those two. And press home here will show the graphs. And now I'm going to change these graphs by hand. So I'm going to select first the Y value, and holding Control and clicking, just adding points here. Just a bunch of points to make it sort of a vibration. And it snaps to the whole frames, that's okay. So let me change this. Okay, so we have sort of a vibration curve. Like this. And we should end it with 0 again. So press N to bring up the properties and set this last one to a value of 0. Okay, now do the same thing for the x value. Let's just remove this. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, we have the x here, so add a bunch of points, and I think that's enough. And make sure this last one is 0. Has a value of 0. Okay. Yeah, let's quickly render this to see what happens. And I'm gonna actually render this without the camera shake, and then render it again with camera shake so you can see the difference it makes. So yeah, I'm gonna press Ctrl F12. Okay, that's far enough. Now I can press Ctrl F11 to bring up my Blender player. And this is what it looks like without camera shake. Doesn't look too good, doesn't it? Now, well, it looks pretty cool, but still we missed something. Okay, okay, and now enable the node or unmute it. And now I'm gonna only need to render this the part where it starts shaking. So set the start frame to say 157 and press Ctrl F12 to render only those frames. Okay, so now it's done. Let's take a look. Ctrl F11. And wait, first, before you do that, set the start frame back to 144 so that the Blender player takes starts playing from 144. Yeah, and that looks a lot better, doesn't it? And you can come in and change these graphs if you like, but I'm happy with them. And yeah, okay, so the problem we get when we do this, of course, is this black border. Let me show. On the first shake frame is this black border here. And to solve this, you can just use a little stupid trick that just adds this camera shake frame on top of the original. So how to do this? Well, add a mix node and plug in the original before the camera shake and the camera shake, just like this, and then press this alpha button, and that will composite this shot over this one. And it doesn't look too good, but it won't be too noticeable when it goes so fast. So this just prevents your frame from being cropped. Another way you could do this is scale it up a little bit, but I don't like that. So yeah, let's do this, and maybe when we use motion blur, when we enable the motion blur back, it will even be more or less obvious. Okay, so this is all about camera shake. Yeah, maybe the last thing you want to do is add a vignette, because it's being used a lot in these kind of movie type shots. So I did cover this in one of my previous tutorials, but I'm just going to do it again. And I'm going to add first a matte ellipse mask. Take a look at it. Looks like this. So I'm going to make it a lot bigger. I'm going to change the width and the height. So it's just inside this, and it's not like this, but kind of rounded. I like it better when it's more rounded. Something like this. And then I want to blur this thing a lot. So I set it to fast Gaussian, and maybe a value of 400 is nice. Yeah, I like this. and then simply multiply this with the color mix node. Multiply this matte with the original shot, and it gives you something like this, really dark edges. So it's a bit too much for me. I'm going to change it to 0.5. Yeah, and now it's almost not visible, but when you remove it you can see the difference. When I mute this node, you can see it's a lot more yeah, it's a lot darker, and it helps focus the viewer on the center. And in this case you want to focus on the robot, of course, but yeah, I think it's it looks better. So yeah, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. We added a mask for the debris. We fixed the reflections. We added camera shake, and we did color correction. Yeah, this concludes this tutorial series. If you now want to save your final result, you should go into your output file, output settings, and choose your folder and set your file type. You can even go for a movie, because it doesn't take too long to render this. It takes a few seconds per frame, and directly save out as a movie will work. So yeah, don't forget to enable the motion blur. These two guys, we have to unmute them, and it takes a while, but then we can see the difference. There we have the motion blur, which adds even more realism. And yeah, I think we are done. So if you have any questions or things you don't really get, ask them on the website, and I'll probably see you in some future tutorial. So cheers, have a great day, and good luck with your own projects.